This episode is brought to you by freedadcourse.com. You are always one conversation away from changing your life, and the power of hello is something that I subscribe to every single day, and I'm always saying hello to new people everywhere I go. Increasing your opportunity, increasing your connection, and getting access to the solutions to the problems that you are facing, whether you're on active duty or just beginning your veteran transition or even transitioning out for 20 years. On the other side of hello are the solutions that you're looking for. Again, head on over to freedadcourse.com. Get your 5-episode audio course to create more connection, create more friendships, and get back to living the life that you're trying to design.
Dory 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home. Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. Welcome to episode 29 of the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome. It is our mission to bring every dad home, and I appreciate that you're taking an hour out of your day to listen to this story because it's a good one. Part of what we do here in the podcast is we share in a big piece of humble pie. We bring everyday dads just like you and me to recognize that we aren't alone in the thoughts that we're having as a dad, as a veteran, as an active duty member, that these are thoughts that aren't meant to be held in silence in our head. And it's one of the reasons why we started a Facebook group for the podcast. The link is down there in the show notes because I'm a firm believer that we weren't meant to do life alone. We spent 3,000 years on this earth in tribes. And somehow in the last 100 years, we've transitioned to a society that believes we have to do life alone. And I ultimately believe that's what's holding a lot of veteran and active duty dads back, because we have a tribe of brothers when we serve, but we don't understand how to take that same tribe mentality and build it within our family. And even build it as after you transition as a civilian, that there are things that you need to have, and a solid tribe of good, solid men around you is one of those. If you're not following me on socials, my Instagram handle is Ben_Killoy. Go ahead, drop me a DM if you have any feedback for the podcast. The podcast also has a handle at Military Veteran Dad. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter at Ben Killoy. You can subscribe to our blog on the website, militaryveterandad.com. And without further ado, I really want to just get this episode started because it really is that good. And Chris shares a great story about being a dog trainer, a dad, and ultimately going through his first divorce while he was serving. So it has a lot of different layers to the onion, and we peel them all back, and hopefully this brings a few dads home. Today in the podcast, we have Christopher Baity. He's an OEF veteran Marine Corps dog trainer and kennel master with 3 combat deployments, 1 civilian deployment, and 2 additional overseas deployments with working dogs. He has over 16 years of dog training and handling experience, currently a certified dog trainer, an evaluator, and service dog instructor. Baity is proficient in animal behavior, obedience training, and kennel management. Baity was awarded the Top Dog Award while attending military working dog handling course at Lakeland Air Force Base. He was also studying Israel under the Israel Defense Force Okez Dog program with 3 other Marines and 5 SSDs. This was the 1 deployment and civilian K-9 career have prepared him for developing and implementing operations at Semper K-9 assistant dogs. Baity specializes in mobility, psychiatric alert service dogs, and enjoys being able to connect with veterans and help them regain confidence and independence. Baity has recently been awarded the Red Bandana Hero of the Year by American Heroes Channel and a Washingtonian of the Year by Washingtonian Magazine. Chris, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Go ahead and describe a little bit what your family looks like right now and give us any gaps of intro you want to fill in.
Yeah, my wife and I went to high school together. We were in a Marine Corps Junior ROTC program. We didn't date in high school. We were, she was my admin officer and I was the commanding officer in our senior year of high school. But we reconnected later in life. She went off to college. I joined the Marine Corps. We have 5 children, aged about to turn 15 down to 19 months old, I believe.
You really got the full spectrum there.
Yeah, 3 girls and 2 boys. It's busy. Having all 5 of them at events and things is helpful managing the other children.
Yeah, because they can kind of help raise each other almost when you got 5.
Yeah, I mean,
especially
I've got a
when they're
little
older.
expanded fire team to help me get stuff done.
I like that. What there's a part of having that that many kids. Is there? I've had the same heart on my, or same idea to try to go bigger. I've got 3. How did you break the barrier at 3? Because I feel like 3 is the golden number in America, and very few people cross that border. So did you have a similar struggle at 3, decide to go for 4, or is it all in and you ended up getting 5 with the
No,
original goal?
my wife and I we're a blended family. I have 2 daughters from a previous marriage. So when I say we have 5 children, meaning we manage our 5 children. We have 3 together, and then I have 2 daughters from a previous marriage, which happened during the Marine Corps as well. So it's a lot. I would say because ours is such a huge gap. Once all the and Amanda and I moved up, started Semper K-9, we stumbled across our 4th child. It was unexpected, but it wasn't. I didn't have any plans to have any more children. And then Abram came along, and then 3 years later, so did Ava. So it came to the point where now we've decided that is it. We'll be in our 50s when they get out of high school, so there's a cutoff there, and I think that's what for us it was deciding on. Well, we had kids at young ages, so realizing that there was a period of time where we're going to be in our twilight years and probably don't need to still be raising teenagers.
You didn't get remarried until you were out of the Marine Corps?
Yes. So I was married for the bulk of my career, and then got out and got divorced, and Amanda and I married in 2013. Something like that.
It's good enough. You've got enough kids to cement it in. You don't need to remember the year.
Yeah, birthdays kill me. We have everybody's birthdays are stretched between September and November. We're all piled in with 2s. I'm the 2nd, she's the 10th, and the 22nd, and
It sounds like
22nd, 24th times, all sprinkled in. Then we have one July 5th. His 15th birthday is coming up soon, so he's the oldest. So he's in Army ROTC in his high school, going into his sophomore year, and then our oldest daughter starts her freshman year of high school this year.
Nice. You've really got a well-seasoned perspective of a lot of different things then.
Yeah, a bunch of different kids, a blended family. Amanda and I grew up in the same type of lifestyle. She was a college girl, and I was a Marine. So it worked out better, that we have very, very similar upbringings, a very, very similar taste, and we both have the same demeanor and the same intelligence level. So it's a nice, and then all the children kind of range from quiet and quiet and intelligent and outspoken and doesn't think as fast as they speak. And managing a business, I think what's the bonus about husband and wife working together is we get to show our children success, and we get to teach life lessons, and really the bonus is we get to work on our own schedule and even work from home. We have to do a lot of travel and a lot of moving around here in the DMV, but it involves a lot of long hours just at home, managing children and meetings and a lot of podcasts, phone interviews and in-person interviews. So we get to show them, success, set the example for them. But see that life takes a lot of effort.
So having so much perspective on a lot of different stages of life, either from your first marriage, second marriage, and having a blended family. The first question we always ask dads is, what does it mean for you to come home? I'd like to maybe change it slightly and say, what did that mean to you in your first marriage, and how has that changed since your second marriage?
When my first deployment was in 2004 with a military working dog. I was engaged to my ex-wife at the time. I found out shortly after I was given the opportunity to deploy, asked if I was willing to volunteer, if you will, and go on with these first missions with a dog team. And it was finding out that she was pregnant, and then doing the entire first deployment knowing she was pregnant and dealing with all that. And, we weren't married. So it was, there was a lot of what ifs and, scenarios that go in my head. And then coming home and, I just missed the birth of my oldest daughter, by 36 hours or something like that. And,
oh man,
and then coming back and, this was early on in the war. I had combat leave and I had, a little bit of downtime, but because where I was stationed and the way the Marine Corps was expanding into combat operations and units were getting downsized from, admin positions, and even and I was a military police officer with a dog. Came back from that first deployment, got promoted to kennel master, and they were downsizing the MPs at my base. So I had to be a watch commander. I had to be a father to a newborn infant, and I had to commute every day, and I was working, 6-7 days a week. And it was almost impossible to try to juggle, that work schedule coming back from a deployment, knowing that
really never got a chance to get off the ground.
It didn't. It really came down to mission accomplishment over troop welfare. I had a job to do, and I had Marines that counted on me, and of course I was dealing with all the struggles of a Marine just coming back from a combat deployment, and there was no. I don't remember much of a transition. I remember taking little PowerPoints and attending little seminars that you had to post deployment, but it was get back into work, keep your mind busy, and hey, we got stuff to do still, and the rest of the Marine Corps is still deploying.
How old were you in that year?
22, 23. I think I turned 23 on deployment.
22-year-old Marine, and most Marines think we own the world at 22, so I can only imagine.
I was a newly promoted sergeant too, and I got promoted pretty quickly to NCO. I picked up sergeant at E5 in 3.5 years, and because of my job as a dog handler, you get promoted out. So I liked being a dog handler. I liked being a team leader, and sergeant and staff sergeant are relatively the same positions, trainer versus kennel master. And so I got to do both of those for, the final 3.5 years of my career, which included 3 more deployments. But so coming back, and then, I finished up my career, still only had the one older daughter, but getting out of the Marine Corps and the transition was super, super difficult. And, and then trying to find a job, during the financial crisis that we went through in 2008, 2009 was terrible. But luckily the government was still pushing on, and I could get government contracts, but that included a lot of work and even another deployment, which is when I ended up going to Afghanistan for a year, and midway through that came back on leave, and my wife got pregnant with our second daughter. And then it wasn't long after that, finishing up that deployment, coming back, and then jumping right back into another government contract, that there's no way I can do all this. I'm working 2 jobs, 7 days a week, trying to manage 2 daughters. And she got fed up with it, that I still had that mission accomplishment over troop warfare mentality, and was not afforded the opportunities to spend time with the family and still make the money that were required, that the family required, and I could easily say that she required, but that running that family in Northern Virginia required. So the marriage deteriorated pretty quickly, and I had spent the next 2 years for the most part trying to keep busy with work and build a good resume and a portfolio, and still be active as much as I can with my children, and her trying to, my ex-wife, trying to find her place in the world. She was a stay-at-home mom, for my our entire marriage in the Marine Corps. And then all of a sudden she's, placed in a situation where she has to, support children and help cover the financial workload and the time that comes to kids entering grade school and entering elementary school. And luckily for me, I was able to kind of busy myself and crafting, my ability to train a dog to do literally anything, that, take that dog to the best of its ability, no matter what the job is. And then, I wouldn't say rekindling, but kind of stumbling upon a relationship with, a high school friend, that turned into, something I was missing in my personal career, and that was, a wife that supported my ambitions and supported me. And to her, she knew a paycheck wasn't what I wanted to do and what I wanted to provide. I wanted to provide a legacy for my children, something that I'm able to set the example to them and be able to blend a personal and professional life. And that's what Amanda is for me. She's I call her the mitochondria of the family cell, or even Semper K-9. She's the powerhouse. She keeps us going and keeps the energy there and keeps it fun.
What woke you up to that word legacy?
But
Was there one event that woke you up to that word legacy?
Yeah, I think probably when we as the nonprofit, we piloted programmed how large we could take the organization. We did 3 expansions in 3 years, going from 3 to 6 dogs a year up to 10 to 20, which is where we currently are. And then we purchased, 34 acres right outside of Marine Corps Base Quantico and we've spent the last, this was 2 years ago this month. And we've spent the last 2 years seeing how, pilot program, how large we could take it, and really developing an animal assisted therapy program, and just, building developing plans for a facility to house, to train a large amount of service dogs, up to 48 service dogs each year, and then anywhere from, I'd say 50 to 100 veteran families in our family integration program. And then showing them, providing data, fine crafting, the type of assistance dogs that Semper K-9 is providing, and producing top of the line service dogs for disabled veterans and their families. And what I affectionately call mental health mobility service dogs. I think I'm probably the first organization that has provided that specialty of service dog that's crafted for a general demographic of transitioning veterans and disabled veterans coming from all branches of service, all types of disabilities, and all eras, all ages, all MOSs, and all combat or non-combat experience. And that's what has kind of become my legacy at Camp Semper K-9, is, we're show my children, in a school of hard knocks model that, hey, this is how you run a business. This is how you're successful. This is how you manage people and time. And it even brings out that old school farm mentality of, grow your own food, survive on your own.
Craft your own life.
Yeah, make a life that you want. Don't be just another cog in the wheel that you're driving off to some job that you hate and working for some boss that doesn't respect you, and and ending up with a resume that talks how good you are at managing numbers and money, and that's not a legacy. And to me, a legacy is the family name, that Semper K-9 name has value to it within the community, and I joke around with my children, are you the most famous person in your school? Because he's been on TV, he's been on, interviews as well. He's been on red carpet events, and he's got to speak to a couple of, minor celebrities and things like that. But we live in a small town, and my wife and I grew up in a small town, and, to be a big fish in a big pond, I think is what legacy means to me. You don't have to be great at what you do, but there's value to your time. There's value to your, the product that you put out in the industry that you work and live in.
Mm-hmm. And also just how you prioritize. If we could go back a little bit, what advice would you send back to your old self in those years of your first marriage that maybe another dad needs to hear?
Ambition is a good question. So if I could go back to 25-year-old me, that's finish up his Marine Corps career, deciding on what to do. It was, don't focus on now. Think about 5 years from now. Think about 10 years from now. I didn't set clear and concise short-term and long-term goals. I was probably more ambitious than I had the maturity and the intellect for. So to be honest, if I go back and tell that person, I'd think a little bit more about decisions that you're going to make. Don't chase after money. Don't try to make other people happy. Think about, hey, it might suck now and it might be difficult now, but
will it get you someplace where?
Yeah, is this where you want to be? Do you want to be doing this in 5 years? And is this decision going to take you where you want to be in 5 years? Or is it going to take you off the path that in 3, 4, 5, or 10 years, you're going to be trying to get back on this path? And I think that would have probably been really good advice for me to hear. And raise these children, be an example of these children that you're not able to do if you're working as much as you are. And money.
It sounds like a little bit you were very ambitious and you were running very fast and very successfully, but you were running towards things you really didn't know what you were running towards. You were just running for the sake of running, because that's kind of what I think you felt like.
Exactly. I chased deployments and I chased challenges and new things when I should have been adapting myself a little better to be successful where I currently am versus looking for something better. I was too worried about the grass on the other side of the fence and, not enjoying where I was. And I missed a lot. I was able to, I'm able to do what I am, and I am where I am now because of good or bad decisions that I made. But, as a father, I wasn't setting an example of being a father. I was setting an example of being maybe a good workman, a good citizen, a good,
maybe a good provider, but a provider.
A good provider, but I wasn't.
We have to play.
Yeah, I wasn't teaching my children how to be I wasn't setting an example of what a good parent was. I was setting maybe a decent example of what a provider is, and here's what hard work looks like, and here's what devotion looks like. But I'm not directly teaching that. It was very indirect and, kind of, the bills are getting paid, the lights are on, he comes home at night, sometimes, or he's gone for months at a time. And I know he's doing stuff great for other people, but what has he done lately for this family? And that was probably something that I should have been aware of then, that luckily Amanda does a good job about making me aware of now, that, the kids are watching, and, be involved and really enjoy the time you have. I spent too much of my 20s trying to be 30 years old and have the maturity of a 30-year-old, learn as much as I could and be a successful, as a 30-year-old, but did not learn all the things you learn with just the time of, cleaning up the dog poop, if you will, and doing the work that gets you there. But I got dumped with a lot of responsibility at a young age, and probably wasn't the best timing. I was a late bloomer growing up, and I think, my maturity took my late 20s to actually catch up to where I should have been as a good sergeant and staff NCO. And I probably wasn't the best example to my peers and my children, but, hopefully I'm doing that now. And it's just hopefully they don't make the same mistakes I did in my 20s.
It's a good example of it's never too late to come home. No matter how many roads you might have taken as a dead end, there's always a road that's waiting for you to come home to your family.
Yeah, I definitely could have took some humility in providing a strong home front instead of just a strong defense. Making sure we're defending something they actually want to stay in and we want to live in. And it took some humility and putting play in my place and having difficult times financially and professionally to say, hey, you don't have to be great at, really anything, just be great at who you are. And that's really what I came home to, was knowing that this family and this legacy that I want to live, and, the example I want to set my children, that is me being present now and leaving my past behind and being the best person I can now and going forward.
I like that. Leads us into our next favorite question to ask. What are some of the simplest things your kids love doing with you that you're always like, you can't believe that's what they want to do with you? Probably something related to dogs, since you're a dog trainer.
Learning is, I think, a big thing in our household. We very rarely have just quiet, non-family time. If we're all together, we're probably doing something, and it may be we play little games. My oldest daughter loves to play trivia, and it'll be asking things about people in the family, and hey, who knows what everybody's favorite color is, and who can recite what their favorite movie is or books, or hey dad, what year was this and what dog was this, and hey, what when we lived here and we visited these things. So there's a lot of, my daughter loves playing trivia with all the kids, and my oldest son, he loves to do a lot of just teenage boy stuff, shooting guns and exploring and hiking and doing new things and zip lining and stuff like that, where my daughter seems to be more of a sponge and learning about stuff, and my oldest son wants to just do anything. So we do a lot of things as a family. Yeah, we do a lot of things as a family, and we try to be active, and we try to be a fit family and an involved family. But we really, if as a family, if we like to do anything, is just to attending community events together. And that's what Semper K-9's, a lot of their programs get us the ability to do, is get out there and we've got the 4th of July parade coming up. We go to all my son's ROTC events. When my daughter, she goes to a Catholic school, when they have, educational and religious ceremonies and different events that they do, we try to be involved in that, and fundraising for the schools, and, any kind of family thing that we can do just to be involved. I think that's really what our family enjoys to do, and we try to make it unique. We sneak off in the woods and our property and do just goof around in the woods a lot, learning about different things, whatever we can, and that's a lot of what we spend our time doing.
I like that. And in 2019, where people are moving further and further apart, having those threads in your fabric of your legacy, where doing life together as a family, I can only imagine how those threads will weave into their life, of how they incorporate their role as a father or a mother, of how coming together is how we feel the most as a family.
Yeah, I love watching old farm movies or with the kids, or like Old Yeller and Robinson Crusoe and all those old movies that my parents and I grew up on. Our children love to watch, and they went down to the creek and built a teepee the other day after watching Robinson Crusoe or something like that, and things like that. I love just for them to do, and things that I did as a kid versus of course I have to combat with video games and movies, and luckily our children they're not real big phone people or iPad. They kind of watch them, but they do things. And my son randomly will get a spark in wild hair, and he'll clean the entire basement, which is weird sometimes. And like this, he cut his grass, the entire front yard on the lawnmower today for the first time, and without any kind of requesting. It was just, he was bored, and hey, can I cut the grass? Sure. So
yeah, what dad's gonna turn that down?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, well, I like cutting the grass and I like doing the yard work, but there's only so many hours in a day. I joke around with Amanda and everybody I work with that I wish there were 8 days a week and 30 hours in a day, because I could get so much more done. But, and we center everything around, the veteran lifestyle and the community, the philanthropic, the, homeowner, or excuse me, the business owner mentality, and, enjoy your free time when you can, because, work hard now so you can play hard later, and enjoy things with the family. And even if it's, cleaning up the yard, cleaning up the basement, or watching a movie and building a teepee, I'm hoping they're learning, things that I learned that, make me successful now. And really, I just want to set an example of, a happy life.
Mm-hmm. I've talked about it a lot in the podcast, where I feel like what parents don't do really well these days is getting their kids out of their life. Like, just going to school for 12 years isn't going to make them know what they want to do for the rest of their life. And I like what you're talking about, because you're just exposing them and getting them to love life in different flavors, because so many of us are told to love one flavor of life. And then you have to try to figure out how to love something you really don't love. And I love how you're incorporating adventure and outings, and just getting your kids to think outside of their head, just for who they are, because I feel like that's what sets them up for better success when they get out of high school, that they already know who they are and hopefully can start to piece together of how they fit in.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing, I was an awkward teenager. My wife wasn't, and I probably learned the hard way how to be mature and how to grow up, and they get to see, the calm and cool collective me versus the hot-headed and crazy one. And my wife is definitely the more even-keeled one, but the first one to get upset when everything's wrong. So they get to see, the good and the bad. At a bigger minimum, they keep me from blowing a gasket just because I know I have to set the example for them, and I have to be a good dad.
There's two things that I often think about, that dads, especially ones that like aren't very humble, maybe if their ego is still on pretty well, that we won't recognize that our own story can help our kids walk through theirs. So like a lot of times, like my daughter's a little bit young, but just starting to get kind of the age of bullying and kids not being nice and picking on her. And I'm getting more to where I start to talk about my time as going through school, and I was bullied. Like there is a lot of just validation when you share your own story, and a lot of dads hide the bad side of, or what they don't want their kids to be exposed to. But when you open that raw side of your life, you can help your son or daughter walk through that. And there's always good and bad. And even if I do lose my cool, I've always at night when I'm tucking them in, I'll always apologize for whatever I did as my action, because I want them to recognize that you're imperfect, you're human, and as long as you're willing to come back and ask for forgiveness, then you can learn from that. But it's you have the ego that you're always right, and you only have one side of a life, which is the one that you're having now, which is you're wise and you're all smart. But we all had stories of where we come from in high school, and there's just a lot of good wisdom to share with our kids, because they need to know that you also walked that road, because then you have common ground to talk about something and they feel safe coming to you with the next problem they have.
Yeah. And I've learned now that I have two teenagers that there's a lot of deception and hide, from parents, and I remember when the kids were, we were going through DVD collections, and movies that we can't see them, and even before like IMDb, it's like, okay, they can't watch this movie, and we've gotten to that point where I don't want to shelter them as much, because I feel that's we're not giving them a chance to toughen up, because the world is a tough place,
and I think it's most important, as long as the truth comes from you first. That's the most critical part. Like you can,
I'm definitely not one.
But you want to make your wisdom the first one they hear versus someone on the playground.
Yeah, and just like you said, I'll be the first to apologize if I have no problem admitting when I've done something wrong or there's a fault involved, and I think sometimes that's with children. Even if you have to apologize, with my oldest, if he does something silly, which unfortunately is more often than not. You can get upset with them and just say, and I hated when my parents used to tell me, like, why you're in trouble? Like, no, half the time I didn't. So it's not even that. It's like, I'm sorry I had to get on to you, but you understand why I got on to you, I think has a lot of weight with a teenager of, if you don't understand why, please explain to me how I can better parent you. And I think that we don't miss that, or I think a lot of parents may miss that with, disciplining their children, that, it's not necessarily the punishment that we're speaking of, it's the life lesson. Did they learn from your mistake of how you, may have disciplined, or did they learn why there was a reason for a discipline? So there's a lot of humility in that as a parent, and learning, how far. And in the dog world, we talk about titration level, how much pressure the dog could actually take before they snap or they break, either break the obedience and the control, and they lash out, or you break their demeanor and their disposition where they shut down. And that's a fine line with teenagers, but definitely just as a parent, as you have more than one child, you've got to discipline, and you've got to take into account that they're different. Every child, so I have 5 of them. Trust me, you can't punish or teach any of them the same as another.
I always like to use the analogy that or remind my kids, like, how you're trying to figure out how to be 7. well, daddy's still trying to figure out how to be 34. Like no matter what age you're at, you're still trying to figure out. So like, and then I also I use that as like, I give them grace because they're still trying to figure out how to be 7 and I'm still trying to figure out how to be 34. And they're learning. So you can't necessarily get upset for something for an age that they still haven't quite mastered.
Yeah, and they remind me too much of my age. Like as I get the podcast, I got the grays in the beard and the gray all in my hair, and I get reminded too often how close to 40 I am. And I think we need to do that to them. If we could somehow turn back the clocks on them and say, well, think you've got all of puberty to go through, and that's not going to be fun.
No, I always wish they could make them wake up to like, it's always funny how the kids don't like naps. But as an adult, you're like, I wish I could have a nap.
Right.
It's like you should really enjoy these nap times more often because there's going to be come in life where that's all you're going to want, and you're going to be envious of your kids getting their nap because as a burnt out parent or mom or dad, you're like, oh, I just want to go to bed. Meanwhile, your kids running around crazy and won't listen to you.
We're really relaxed on bedtimes, and to us, bedtime is when I'm annoyed with you. Well, it could be 8:30, it could be 9:30, but bedtime is usually 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock for the older kids. But it really comes to the point where I'm ready to relax, and you haven't chilled yet. It's time to go to bed.
Yep,
that's the cutoff for me.
You need to disappear.
Yeah, I'm tired of parenting today. I am off the clock. I put in my 12-hour day. Go to sleep.
So let's change gears a little bit. What has you most excited in your Semper K-9 business?
Honestly, well, I guess probably to me the biggest thing is just we've got a lot of stuff coming up in 2019 that is almost a culmination of the last really 3.5 years of effort, and that's building up that we've got a really good core of volunteers that are training our service dogs, and now we've gotten to the point where we've filled that model up so much that we have to build this facility, and I tell our board of directors, and I tell some of our volunteers too, is like we've got to either hit the brakes or upshift because we're going to blow the transmission if we keep going at the speed we're going.
That's a good analogy.
So the thing I'm excited most is getting this facility. We've seen, we see the efforts of our labor come together really fast, and essentially gearing up for 2020 because the last 2 graduations that we've had this year, we've graduated like 7 service dog teams so far, 7 or 8 this year, probably another 4 or 5 before the end of the year. And it'll be one of our bigger years, but we have almost 18 dogs in training right now, which is the most we've ever done. And seeing how our model is getting a lot of attention from other service dog providers that are nonprofits around the U.S. and around the world that are saying, hey, the Semper K-9 model of the national and the community model of training service dogs for veterans is a tip of the spear. It's the upper echelon of how it should be done on a very effective manner and show that, either through our financials and our 990s on the website and, our budgets that we're approving and what we're spending every year, that, every community can get together as long as you got an organization that's ran with a good mission and good people running it, that, you could do a lot with minimal financial backing as long as you have the manpower, that sweat etiquette to go with it. And so the big thing about 2019 for us is putting that facility in place that will really show that, hey, there's a good demonstration of how a nonprofit provides really top of the line service dogs for disabled veterans with minimal restrictions on, the type of dog, the type of veteran, the type of disability, and how much money we want to say that dog costs to train. All that stuff is second nature to me. I'm going to take that dog and train him to the best abilities. And now I've gotten such a core, what we call them K9 coaches, which is their service dog training instructors, that they're teaching their own classes. I'm not having to teach, 30, 40 classes a month. They're able to teach it and bring in the new volunteers. And this facility will give them a place to do that, and be able to expand our operations to really fine-tuning our dogs to make them even better, and potentially even help more veterans and more families. But that's going to be the essentially the culmination of the last 5 years of effort for Semper K-9 to say, here's a finished model of a top of the line service dog provider.
So I'm going to challenge you on your own advice. When you close your eyes, what do you see in 10 years?
Oh man.
What are you running towards?
The problem with that question is there's two paths that Semper K-9 is probably going to travel down in 2020. And one of those paths is going really big, and in 10 years, that would mean we probably would be one of the premier service dog providers in America, nonprofit or anyone. Or I see a much more humble, a smaller, specialized service dog provider. It really, to me, it's depending on how much I'm willing to gamble. So in 10 years, Semper K-9 will definitely be doing the mission that we're doing now, probably at a much grander scale. I don't imagine many more than 50 service dog teams a year, because that is a lot. For any organization, I think, to manage, without reducing your product, the success of your product. So who knows? I say in 10 years, these podcasts, will be daily, of us instructing, and giving guidance to other organizations. But really, if I say in 10 years, we're doing almost the exact same thing, just a little better. And I think that's the humble side that I want to stay on, and not say that we're going to be this grand service dog organization, which is an easy path to go. But I think I prefer to, stay humble and say that, we're doing really good work, at a steady pace. I think I'll give some homage.
Your kids are going to be almost
Army on that one.
Your kids are going to be almost done when they're 50. So by the time you're 50 and your kids no longer want to hang out with you as much, and most of your kids are off already, you might even have a grandchild when you're 50 in 10 years. There's probably going to be a world where Semper K-9 is a sustainable organization on its own, with the right leadership, that you're not as part of the day-to-day, where you're more of a consultant for other K-9 investments or in K-9 institutions, and you're more helping others achieve the same level of success. And you're in a different season of life where you're not so hands-on, but you're helping others get to where you were.
Yeah, all my children have expressed interest in either the veteran or the giving world. I think I've got one that wants to be I know she wants to be a nurse, but I don't think she quite knows what she wants to be as far as a nurse, because she wants to be a nurse for people and for animals. But, and I joke around, we say Semper feline, Semper equine, that we'll take Semper K-9 even farther if the kids do. And my oldest son has his eyes on, some form of military academy. I'd love to see him go to Annapolis, but, he said VMI, even West Point. To me, I don't really care. Man and I joke around that I'd love to see our oldest son as the commandant of the Marine Corps, and then our youngest son is like the commanding officer of the MARSOC or something like that. I've tried to push them to go the officer route just for sake
pure
of
easiness.
Well, our family have done enlisted, between the Kazi family and the Baity family. We've covered the enlisted ranks pretty well, in almost all the branches, within my family. I was the first Marine, but I've got two cousins, one that was in the Army, one that was in the Navy. And then my wife's family, hers is the first generation going back to the Revolutionary War Revolutionary War that didn't have a Kazi in conflict. And I joke around, man, that's why she had to marry me. She had to keep the Kazi and the Kazi family name going, and I'd hate to see my children have to go to combat. But my youngest boy, he wants to be a dog trainer, and then my youngest daughter, they love when we get new puppies in, which is regularly. I think probably once a month we've got 1 to 3 new puppies coming through, starting the program that we get for 2 weeks to 6 weeks, and they're always very involved with it. It's part of our life is taking care of dogs, and it's just part of the lifestyle that they go through. And I'd love to see them follow that, but we have several volunteers that we consider family that have worked with us for 4 and 5 years, and I see them taking up helm within Semper K-9, and I'd love to see my children maybe take over my job one day. But if they go out and become doctors, I'd love to have a Dr. Baity in the family. So I'm gonna give them the wings to fly and let them navigate, let them pilot their life the best they can, and hope that I can just leave something behind for someone. If it's not my children, then one of our volunteers and one of our adopted Semper K-9 family. I'd love to see Semper K-9 be here and be the name for great dog training and great animal behavior and certain animal assisted activities. In 50 years, and when I'm 50, I joke around with our volunteers. I'd love to be up there on a porch smoking a cigar and screaming across the field, "You're doing it wrong!" And let me come down there and cane or wheelchair my way down and show them how to train.
Hopefully,
a dog.
you're not in a wheelchair at 50.
Well, we'll see. I don't know. Well, you got enough deployments in our back. I joked that I loved when it was my left knee and my right knee, not my good knee and my bad knee, and when I could bend over and pick some up off the ground without making an exclamation about how far to the ground it is. Growing up, I was like, I want to be tall, and now that I'm over 6 feet, I'm like, yeah. And now it's like, crap, things on the ground are way far down there. I got to bend over and get it.
5'8". I've always wished if there was a pill I could take to be taller, I would definitely take it. You remind me?
Yeah, but when you get up, there's a lot of body to be moving around. I gotta. I've into my 30s, and I hope that my family is not an athletic family, and neither is my Amanda's family. We're doers. We're blue collar people, if you will. And I've been trying to get into races and off-roading, and I did the Marine Corps Marathon last year, and I'm gonna do the 10K this year. I've done several 8Ks and 10Ks and run amucks and some crossroad challenges and things that pushed my physical limitations, and I still feel that I'm still as strong or maybe a little stronger than I was as an active duty Marine. I just don't have the physical endurance to do what I did back there in my 20s. But staying active I wish something all my kids did, but I was like, my kids are allergic to sweating. It feels like they don't like to sweat. So I have to do these things on my own. And I'd love to be able to finish a marathon with one of my kids, in my 50s or 60s, and one of my children. I'd love to be able to do something like that with them in the future. So we'll see. I'd love them to go do whatever they want, but Daddy's going to need to get taken care of in his later years, I'm sure.
Yeah. You reminded me of some advice that Andy Stump gave on episode 19 that to give your kids the widest view of the American dream as possible. Like,
I love that.
You want them to do whatever they want, but as fathers, we have an obligation and even just an opportunity just to expose them to the widest view of the American dream that's possible. Let them see all the opportunity that's possible, which is even what you're doing with your business. Like, they can create opportunity from nothing if they see that they fit into a space that's not being occupied.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of how Semper K-9 was born, was, my career, my success, with dogs. And I hit a point where I didn't like working for other dog trainers, not to say I could do it better, but I really hit that point where I said, I can do this better. And here's several examples of how I can do it better and how I've done it better. And, filling a niche, in a specialized industry, within the animal training world, which is, providing service dogs for those who either can't afford it or there isn't even that specialty. When I fell into the service dog world, there wasn't an accommodation of mental health mobility dogs. There were dogs that were trained for people in wheelchairs, people with severe physical limitations, and ones that were, severe post-traumatic stress, severe traumatic brain injury that were medication was not working for whatever reasons, that the treatment that plan that they had with their doctors just was not successful. And I saw, hey, I can do this, I can, and I got luckily enough that, I got interviewed by a national nonprofit with the time and money to spend and the sponsor and the backing to say, we want to let this Marine, run with it as far as he can. Pilot program to see how big he can take it, and that's where Semper K-9 came from. And said, okay, here's within this region, here's the commodities we have access to. Here's this training plan that I've developed. Here's the skills, that the dogs can be trained for, and here's the literature and the background to prove the efficacy of service dogs for these types of disabilities. And here's how we can reproduce that product over and over and over, into the fact that we're putting out multiple, versions and generations of this, evolving product that's getting better and better to, and saying, hey, we've created an industry that did not exist 10 years ago or 6 years ago. And showing that to my children to say, hey, my oldest son, and I used him as an example probably too often, but he's the easiest one to compare to, that he has gone through a lot of phases of creativity, and you could see how he's developed this style of undertaking that he is good at, and telling him, hey, plug that into an industry that you can succeed in, or create that industry. If it doesn't exist, then that is what inventors did. They saw a need, they saw a desire and a use of a product or a service, and they filled that void. And to me, whether I don't think I could patent a mental health service dog, but that's what I feel like I've done. And I'd love my children, if he's able to take even what I've done, and I'd love to say, I don't want you to follow my footsteps. I want you to step farther than I can. And one of my great favorite quotes to talk about that I've kind of lead my life by is, that I believe Newton mentality of, if I've seen farther than others, because I stood on the shoulders of giants. I know it's paraphrased, but I'd love my son or any of my children or anyone that I encounter to, hey, stand on my shoulders. I want you to say, if you overtake the Baity name or you overtake the Semper K-9 name and say, I've evolved this into something better, then even though I'm a footnote in history, I'm willing to be a footnote and a B in parentheses at the bottom, evolved from this. Then, if my children do it, if not, then anybody, I pride myself in teaching what I've learned and do it better than me. If I'm an inventor, invent something better than what I did. Take my product and make it even better. And that's what I think we do as fathers, and we do as any business leader, anybody managing even a restaurant. Take that product and make it better. And that's what I'd love to do, and I love my kids to do.
I love that. And another thing that I got from Andy Stump was he described it as a Navy SEAL, he was effectively trained to be the strongest fighting killer that America has to offer. But the effectiveness of what he was able to achieve was how far his rifle could fire. And that was it. No matter how much he trained, he could only be as effective as a round could travel. As a father, your round can literally travel generations into the future. And that's essentially what you're talking about, is your ability to impact effectiveness is generational when you're a father. But your best day in the military is still the limitation of the M16.
I love that. That's a good comparison. Although
even a missile, if you're thinking of a missile is only as effective as how far it can go. Like all of that has some finite number attached to it. That's it. You can be the best drone pilot in the world, but you can only do as far as your drone can fly.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to compare a weapon system to a dog and say, yep, well, we can even, like easy comparison with dogs to see what dogs did in, Roman, leading up to World War I and World War II, a huge advancement, but it does take a lot of time, a lot of fine crafting.
And a dog that you give to the right person could literally change that family forever. And you have no idea what that family will achieve by helping their dad come home with.
Yeah, I think a great lesson from that is to not be the M16 to your child. Don't be their limitation by, like we talked about earlier, keeping them from the real world and trying to sugarcoat things that, this is life and this is, and I think, that's a good point to that. Just don't be the limitation for your children
Yeah, I like
growing
to
up.
spin on that. It has a nice ending to it.
Yeah.
So, Chris, as we wrap up, what's a parting piece of advice you want to leave for military dads?
Definitely be involved. When I talk to veterans, or when the question is posed to me, what advice would you give? I always say educate yourself. I hate to say you have to be, and I've used this phrase a couple of times. You have to be the smartest person in the room, and then you have to find another room, because you've got to go beyond that. If you're the smartest person in that room, you're in the wrong room. And for those fathers out there, being involved, you want to be the smartest person in your child's life, but your goal is to make them smarter than you. Teach them everything you've learned. And I think if I'd say anything, is exactly what we were just talking about. Is don't be the limitation for your children. Be an example and be a conduit for them to be the best person they can. To be example to other people around you, and a homage to the Marine Corps. If I spent a vast majority of my adulthood tied to the Marine Corps and the teachings of leadership principles, leadership traits, and my favorite have been tact, dependability, and then set the example. If that's the fifth leadership principle, and if any father leads with anything, and you could be awesome at whatever you want, and be great at whatever you think you can be great at, but be an example. If you want your children to be successful, then be successful, or be as successful as you can be, and let them stand on your shoulders, and don't be a limitation to them. Let them be the best that they can be. That's too much of an Army plug there. Honor, courage, commitment.
You were good. And then I was thinking, I was like, your drill instructors would be proud that you remembered that was number 5. And then you plugged it at the end with the Army. You went to the opposite side of the Marine Corps spectrum.
Yeah, there's I work with so many soldiers. I spent 2 deployments with the Army, with the 51st Engineer Battalions out of Leonard Wood, and I went to MP school up at Fort Leonard Wood, and a lot of the Marine Corps school. I went to K-9 school with the Air Force, and now I think we did some statistics the other day and did a survey, and it's I'd probably say 25% of the veterans that we work with aren't either Marine Corps or Army. And it's almost split from those remaining veterans. It's almost split right down the middle between Marines and veterans, because of how many of them had to deploy.
Multiple times.
And I think and because I went and saw an Army recruiter before joining the Marine Corps, and the uniforms were a big turnoff for me. But the fact that I couldn't be a dog handler, that my best bet was to be an MP, and then in 4 years maybe I could be a dog handler, or take some college classes before joining the Army, and then become a vet tech, which was not appealing to me at all. And kind of, I spent so much time with the Army. They have such good phrases, and I saw something that I shared about, that kind of argument between the Marine Corps and the Army, especially with combat and dog handlers, is, big fish, big pond, little fish, little pond, however you want to look at it. But, if there was a way to combine, a special force in the Marine Corps and a special force in the Army, and make a new branch of the service, that would definitely be a fighting force to reckon with, because there's a lot of similarities and comparisons between both branches that would definitely make for some for some crazy stories and some crazy accomplishments, I think. But I know it probably couldn't be done, and veterans are always going to pick on each other about their boot camps and their branch of service. And the Marine Corps always got that we get to fight with the Army because it's easy to fight with them. All the other branches are just
they're just there.
Hey, thanks for helping us out. But I love all my service members. We get to work with all different branches, and I get to learn things that I would have never learned in the Marine Corps. Life lessons and things that those branches have provided as leadership and as education to all their service members and all the veterans who come out of those branches. And I get to benefit from all sides of that. So I get to hopefully be better at understanding our veterans and and I think if anything, that's what I can continue to learn into my twilight years, to make myself a better person and maybe a better example. And I get to secretly I get to get made fun of from other Marines because I'll use Army terms, and I get, made fun of from the Army for the Marine Corps traditions and
keeps you humble.
But it definitely keeps me humble, makes me better, and I think it just builds that camaraderie that we all had a good fight. We all volunteered for this. We all, for the sake of the American people, we're all countrymen. We're all veterans. I don't mind that warrior term, and I don't want that war fighter and that, that Marine and that soldier, but we're all countrymen, and I think that homage back to the Revolutionary War and, even the Civil War, countrymen fighting countrymen, and we're all together. And, if Semper K-9 does anything, that's what we do, is we help our fellow veterans, our fellow countrymen be better at what they're doing. And I'm looking forward to keep doing that for as long as the industry exists, as long as Semper K-9 wants me to do it, I'm going to keep doing it.
Well, I absolutely love your mission. Chris, where's the best place if people want to connect with Semper K-9?
We're on all social medias. Our website I love our website, semperk9.org. And we have a lot of programs. We have a lot of things. We're a national organization, although we are in Northern Virginia. But we provide dogs all over the country. I have dogs. I have a dog in Hawaii, a dog in Japan, a dog that is in Europe regularly, and all over the U.S. But the website, social media, just sharing our mission, signing up for our newsletter on our website. If you're in this area, please check us out. We have tons of opportunities to be involved, to learn about our mission, to maybe train a service dog for a veteran, or help us spread awareness, the benefit of service dogs, for disabilities, or, just the camaraderie that, the community has available to them for the veterans. There are a lot of veterans in Virginia, but there's I guarantee you, no matter where you live in the U.S., there is a veteran living in your community who may or may not use your help. You may or may not know that, there's things that he has access to, and spreading our mission to those veterans who could benefit from us or benefit from any veteran service organization that's doing something that veteran could benefit from, and helping out, nonprofits. There's a benefit from, just knowing what's going on in the community, and let's break the wheel. Let's get, not to give a homage to Game of Thrones there at all, but, let's get out there and let's be involved. Let's educate ourselves with who's in our community, and let's better ourselves as Americans. Let's better ourselves by understanding other Americans, understanding how Americans are helping each other, and how, you as an American could be helped by being involved with your community, be involved with nonprofits, be involved. Get out there and do something.
Well, I absolutely love everything you do, and I'm positive we brought a few dads home with this episode. Chris, thank you for this time this afternoon, and thank you for coming on the show. That's a wrap, and thank you for listening to today's show, and I really hope you enjoyed it. The lifeblood of any new podcast are the reviews. If you haven't reviewed the podcast yet on iTunes, I would really appreciate it, and you will help us get the message out to even more military veteran dads. As John Maxwell says, if there is hope in the future, there is power in the present. Dads, it's time to come home.